will just turn off. Okay, and I will just turn off my video as well. That's great. So thanks for coming along this evening. My name is Kat. I'm an energy advisor with Changeworks. We're an environmental charity based up in Edinburgh, but we work throughout Scotland. I work for the Affordable Warmth team, and I work in the Scottish Borders area supporting householders with a range of energy issues and needs, including advice on reducing energy bills, communicating with suppliers, energy debt advice, and just general energy saving advice around the home. We work with anyone throughout the Scottish Borders. I would say our team in the Affordable Warmth team, we tend to work with people in what we call fuel poverty or at risk of fuel poverty, but really anyone can access our service if they're experiencing any of the issues that I just mentioned there. Today, I'm here to talk to you about just kind of getting ready for winter and saving on your heating and your fuel bills. In light of recent news, the rise in energy prices and the withdrawal from the market of a number of energy companies, I'm sure this is quite present on everybody's minds. This presentation was prepared in advance of the news events of last week, just with the collapse of a couple of companies, and obviously we have the price rises coming in October, but I will aim to address some of these issues as we move through tonight's presentation. It should take around 30 minutes, and we will have time for questions at the end. So this is the time of year when we start thinking about putting our heating back on and our bills tend to rise. Tonight I'm going to take you through some energy saving tips for within the home, looking at where you can make some financial savings and also energy efficient choices. We'll also take a look at what you can do to save on your energy tariff to further reduce your savings over the course of a year. As I said previously, this is obviously a bit of a changing situation, particularly in terms of tariffs and switching at the moment, but hopefully I can give some general advice that will help in the coming months. So we'll just start with energy saving around the home. Not surprisingly, oh, wait a minute. Sorry, I'm just wondering why that screen is blank. There we go. Everything's coming on slowly. I'll just bring that on just now. Not surprisingly, the most energy intensive room in your home is the kitchen. We have a lot of appliances in here that are high energy devices and they rely on electricity for use. And we also use a lot of water in this room, which takes a lot of energy to heat up. And electrical heating is also the most expensive. So to look at saving energy in the kitchen, there are a number of quick wins that we can do, which will not only help reduce our bills, but also be more efficient and environmentally friendly. If we look at your washing machine first, if you try and use it when you have a full load to put in, so you're not putting in more than necessary, use the eco setting, and where possible, use the 30 setting. This is 40% cheaper than washing on a higher setting and can save you around £8 a year. Drying clothes outside or on a clothes rail inside for free instead of a tumble dryer, if you can, it can save you a further £35 a year. If you only fill the kettle with as much water as you need, and when washing dishes, try not to leave the tap running, but use a basin instead, or the plug in the sink, because it's quite a large saving also. If you can save, you can save around £39 a year by correct use of the appliances mentioned here. Add to this air drying your clothes instead of using the tumble dryer, and it can save you another £35 a year. So each change has a small saving, but if you add them all up together over the course of the year, it can be quite significant. And that's obviously just a few appliances that we've mentioned so far. I will talk through some more. So just a few extra tips here. Choosing the right size ring for your pan, it's more efficient and therefore more cost effective. Using a lid where possible. It's more efficient and has the added benefit, obviously, of reducing condensation within the kitchen. And you can turn off the hob a minute or two earlier, as well as whatever you're cooking will keep on cooking and just save a few pennies there too. And if you're looking to, just going to bring these on here. If you're looking to further reduce bills, thinking about the most efficient way of cooking can make a difference. As you can see here, a microwave typically uses less energy and is more cost effective and efficient compared to the oven or stove. And you could also think about cooking extra portions and reheating in the microwave. It will save time and also money, as you're not having to use the oven or the hob every single time you're cooking. So, oh, excuse me. So loading the dishwasher fully can save you around £9 a year, and it's good to use the eco setting also. And if you can turn off the heated drying function where possible and open the washer just to let the load air dry, this is also more energy efficient. So that's just some kitchen tips for you, just in terms of being a bit more energy efficient and looking to reduce things over the winter months. So if we move on to energy saving in the bathroom, let's bring these all on here. Apologies for this. A 13-minute shower is the equivalent of one bath, and having a 5-minute shower instead of a bath can save you around £18 per year, but that's per person. So every minute you reduce your shower by can save around £8 a year. So if everyone in the household were to reduce their shower time, it could make quite a considerable difference. Also, a water-saving shower head on a mixer or a gravity tank-fed shower can save up to £38 a year. And just lastly, looking at setting your hot water thermostat to 60 degrees. If you have a hot water tank, is also the most effective. And making sure you have it set for just the time you need can make a big financial difference. Generally, 1 hour a day is sufficient, depending on how you use it, and if you have an electric shower, and it's also much more cost effective. It's probably one of the sort of small pieces of advice that we give to people who come to us, but which has a really big impact for them. People often have their hot water on for longer periods of time, and it does actually raise the cost of their bills. That and reducing shower times can make quite a difference. So just moving on to saving energy in the living room, thermally lined curtains are incredibly effective at blocking out drafts, and closing these at dusk will keep the heat in. Just turning off appliances at the plug rather than leaving them on standby, this can save £40 a year across appliances. So quite a saving there, just from turning plugs off, obviously, where you can reach them. And using the central heating rather than a focal point fire like an electrical gas is 3 times more efficient and therefore more cost effective if you're looking to save further money. And where you have them, using the radiator valves in each room to control the heat and have it where you want it is also a great way of saving money and being more efficient with your heating. And lastly, avoiding placing furniture in front of radiators if you can, as it will block the heat into a room. So if your radiator is under a window, you could also consider buying some low-cost radiator panels which deflect the heat back into the room rather than up and out of the window, and this certainly improves comfort levels as well. So it's quite a sort of low-cost solution to just keeping the heat into the room. So just moving on to saving energy in other rooms. You can set your radiator valves lower in bedrooms than in other rooms. So for some of us with a shift to home working, we could maybe change that to setting them lower in rooms you're not using in that time, because we're all using our homes a little bit differently at the moment. Heat will also rise upstairs, so you can turn down top floor TRVs, which is your radiator valves, and adjust them during the day into the evening, depending on where you are. It is important to keep some background heat in your unused rooms, though, just to avoid condensation and dampness. So probably having your heaters off entirely in rooms you're not using, particularly through the sort of coldest months of the winter, is not such a good idea, and having a little bit of heat can be helpful. So lighting accounts for 20% of a typical household's electricity bill. So it's important to switch off lights in empty rooms. LED bulbs are now available for all fitting types. A 100-watt incandescent bulb can save up to £7 per bulb per year, and a 50-watt halogen bulb can save up to £3 per bulb per year. So if you think about all the lights that you have in your room, switching over to LEDs can make a big difference. Just want to take a quick look at heating controls. I really do think this could be a presentation in itself, so I will try and keep it brief. But getting to know how your controls work can make a real difference in the coming winter months, in keeping bills down, but also for your comfort levels. If you have a boiler, you're likely to have the controls pictured, a timer and a program, a room thermostat, the thermostatic radiator valves, and potentially, depending on your system, a hot water cylinder thermostat also. Setting your timer, the picture there at the top, for 2 or 3 periods during the day, allowing for a half hour to warm up and cool down periods, can help manage your heating and potentially avoid that situation where the heating is sometimes switched on and then isn't turned off as we sort of go about our day. Of course, you can always manually switch that on and off if you need to, for extra heat, and if you're unsure how to use your timers, we can provide extra advice and support on that. You would also use your room thermostat to automatically turn off the boiler when the home is warm enough. So if you set it for, say, 18 degrees, once the house reaches that temperature, your heating will go off. So that just makes sure that you're not overheating the house and unnecessarily spending money on that. The recommended setting is between 18 and 21 degrees, slightly higher if you have health conditions or are elderly. They would recommend up to 24 degrees. The thermostat's normally in the hallway, and one set can just be left to that temperature. See the second picture there, the little dial on the wall, that's your room thermostat. Turning the thermostat down by 1 degree can save you £75 over the course of the year. So a very effective way of reducing bills if you don't need that extra heat. Obviously, we'd only recommend that if you find that your house is very warm and you feel that you could do with that lower temperature, or if you've got it set to, say, 25, then definitely turning that down a degree or two, or more if you can, would make a big difference for your bills. So we've discussed the radiator valves. They allow you to control the temperature in each room and ensure you're not heating rooms that you don't want to. So just sort of, monitoring those throughout the winter, and as and when you need, can make a real difference to your bills. You won't have a hot water tank if you have a combi boiler, but if you do have a tank, it's just good to ensure that it's set at 60 degrees. The last picture there is an example of a thermostat on a tank, and you can see the arrows pointing at the 60. Any higher, it can scald as the water comes out. You do want it at 60, you want it warm enough to be doing your dishes, but you wouldn't want it lower than 50 degrees also, as there's a low risk of Legionella. Some of you may not have boilers and have electric storage heaters instead. The picture here is typical of the older storage heaters. These have an input and an output control. I won't go into too much detail here. Again, it can be fairly sort of in depth with the controls for electric storage heaters, but the input control tells the heater how much heat to store up during the night. This should be set depending on how cold you think it's going to be the following day. So storage heaters work in that they store up the heat overnight and release it during the day as you need it. They can require a bit of management depending on the weather and your activity the coming day to be most cost effective. and the number you choose to have your input set to determines how much heat is stored. So turning this down in the spring and autumn will make a difference for you when you don't need as much heat, because the higher the setting, the more electricity it will use. If there's no input control there, the heater will automatically decide how much heat to store. As you can see from the pictures, some of them will have 1 to 5 as their input. Sometimes it's 1 to 9. It depends on the type of storage heater that you have. I think, during the sort of spring and autumn, you maybe wouldn't need it any higher than sort of 5, but if it was up to 9, and obviously maybe just down to 2 or 3, but in the winter months, particularly those colder winter months, you might have that up to 5 to be taken in that amount of heat. The output control tells the heater how much heat to let out into the room by opening and closing a vent inside the heater. It can also be called boost or room temperature on your heaters as well. If the output's set higher than 2, the heat is released faster and the heater will get cold very quickly, and you'll probably notice this more on a colder day. The vent will close when the heater stores up the heat, but it'll open again to let the heat out afterwards. So you might choose to release a little in the morning, so you have it set to minimum overnight and during the day, and then you can turn it up to release any remaining heat that you need in the evening. So it is kind of a case of remembering to turn that down to the minimum when you go to bed, and turn it up again when you need that heat. And also knowing that once that, if you have that output set higher during the day, you may not have enough heat left for the evening. So they do require a little bit of management there. The quantum storage heaters, some of you may have those if you've got storage heaters rather than the older type of storage heaters. They hold heat better than traditional storage heaters, and they have a timer to control when the heat is released. They also have a thermostat to control room temperature, and an additional boost heating element, which uses peak rate electricity. So just something to be aware of. If you're boosting that during the day, you're not taking advantage of your nighttime rate. You can see from the little picture there the temperature gauge on that. That does mean with a thermostat you can control the room temperature for each heater, which can be really helpful depending on which room you're spending time in. Again, I think this kind of shows that these types of heating systems can be quite different. They've got quite a lot of different controls and things like that. We have a lot of fact sheets and information about all types of storage heaters, and we're happy to talk these through with people who come to us for advice. And we do also do home visits if people want a sort of show through on how to use their storage heaters as well, if that's of help. So just other ways to keep warm, closing internal doors just to keep the rooms warm that you're using and that you're spending time in, using a hot water bottle, or a modern alternative, the microwave bag, which we have now with our microwaves. Wear several thin layers of clothing rather than one thick layer, as this will trap the warm air in. And having regular hot meals and drinks throughout the day, keeps your core temperature raised, which will just keep you warmer as you move throughout the day. So these are just helpful things if you don't actually have your heating on all the time, just to think about these things for sort of keeping that heat within the home and for yourself. So if we move now to looking at tariffs and energy billings, we've just had a look there at energy saving tips within the home. And as you can see, there's lots of small changes and savings that can add up to reducing, to reduce bills over the course of the year. Looking at tariffs and energy billings, and I'll highlight some things to look out for and some tips to keep your bills as low as possible. So first of all, getting the right tariff. Make sure that the tariff you have works for you. Suppliers charge different customers different rates. For example, online tariffs paid by direct debit or a fixed tariff, some can work out cheaper than others, and it's just making sure you've had that conversation to make sure you've got the right tariff for your situation. Always check the end date of your tariff and make sure you contact your supplier when it finishes to ensure you're on the best deal. Standard or variable tariffs can be expensive, though we are finding at the moment that this is not always the case for some clients, with some suppliers. So it's best to look at all the options with the advisor when or if you phone your supplier. There is a great deal of uncertainty at the moment around suppliers and where you can get the cheapest deal. There are less fixed rate tariffs available, and we're finding that there's less competitive prices to be had just now. That's not to say that switching isn't possible for you in terms of looking for a better deal. There may just be less options out there than there were, and it depends on what your current deal is and what your requirements are. So when you're thinking about switching, the internet is obviously a good tool for finding an alternative supplier. The website listed just there, the Which website, is accredited to the Consumer Focused Confidence Code, the voluntary code of practice aiming to help consumers, and there are others out there which also offer good switching options. You will need to provide postcode, current electricity and gas supplier, method of payment, tariff type and consumption figures. Websites will take current supplier and consumption details and they compare them with all the current tariffs and deals on the market and give a top 10 of alternatives. It helps to have an idea of accurate annual consumption when you're going to do a switch exercise, and give this in kilowatts if you can to give you accurate results. All this information is usually available on your bill. If your bill is showing as having an estimated annual usage, it can be worthwhile submitting a meter reading, asking your supplier for an updated bill, and then going to do your switch, just so that you know it's based on accurate results. You often find you'll get a cheaper deal if you have both gas and electricity with the same supplier, and if you do decide to switch supplier, it's very important that you take a note of the meter readings on the changeover day and submit them to both the new and the old suppliers. We definitely recommend that, and trying not to switch with door-to-door or phone salespersons when you're thinking about switching. Again, it's also something that we can offer advice on, and we do support people through the entire switching process. There are situations where switching supplier is just not possible. If you have debt of over £500 with your current supplier, you wouldn't be allowed to switch till the debt is paid off. Or you may be on a specific tariff for, say, electric storage heating, where historically only Scottish Power could supply your electricity in this area. If you were on, say, Comfort Plus Control, this is changing. We are finding there are a few suppliers out there now which are able or better able to offer what are called complex meter tariffs, and again, we'd be happy to offer advice and support on exploring these options. You may also be locked into a capped tariff. That's the last thing just to bear in mind, which lasts for a certain number of months or years, and there may be a penalty for coming out of that earlier. Sometimes it's it might only be £30, but it's definitely worth taking into account when you're thinking of switching, because it might mean that your new deal is not actually worth the switch, depending on how much you're charged for coming out of a tariff. Okay, just moving on to accurate billing. You might be unsure if your billing is accurate or be concerned about high bills. There are a number of checks you can do just to make sure things are correct when your gas and electricity bill arrives. So firstly, just making sure the name and address is accurate that's appearing on the bill. Obviously, if it says the occupier instead of your name, then the account's not in your name, so that's something to check. The address could be from a previous property, which would indicate a non-priority debt, or the address could be subtly wrong, i.e. they might have, like 3/5 instead of 5/3 if you're in a flat, and just making sure all these details are correct is quite important. The billing time periods, the bill could be charging for time when you're not living in the property. So just checking the time periods when you're being billed for, particularly important if you've recently moved, is quite essential for making sure your billing is accurate. the meter serial number on the bill may not agree with what's on your actual meter. So that's another thing that you can check if you're concerned that your bills aren't accurate. Just checking the meter serial number on your bill matches that on your meter. Again, the most common problem that we find and that clients find is estimated meter reads. Suppliers are only obliged to take an accurate reading once every 2 years. So we encourage clients to take regular meter readings, ideally monthly or quarterly if you can, and phone them into your fuel supplier so that bills are as accurate as possible. You can usually, if you've got an online account, do this over an app now, or you can phone up and just submit them automated without necessarily needing to speak to someone over the phone. Because if bills are constantly based on estimated meter reads, you could either end up paying too much. If they estimate too high, if you're paying by direct debit, it could be set too high, or you could end up with a very large bill if they've been estimated on the low side, which is quite common, and we do see that. So it's definitely important making sure that your reads are accurate. You'll know whether they are or not. There's usually an E next to it if they're estimated, or an A if they're based on actuals. Sometimes it varies from supplier to supplier, but the E is usually a good indication. Checking the start and end meter reads of an account is essential if you're moving home, and also just checking that your tariff is correct. So if a client has an electric, if you have like an electric storage heating system, you'd want your bill to reflect this by showing an appropriate tariff like Comfort Plus white meter, because you want to be taking advantage of that night rate. You don't want to be charged just on one standard domestic rate, because that could indicate a very big billing problem. So usually these are the first things to look for if you're concerned about your bills, just this sort of accurate billing and making sure your bill's looking how it should. So just want to take a quick look at the methods of payment for your bills, as you could find that there's a method out there that suits you better than you're currently using. There are 5 main ways to pay for your bills, all with pros and cons, but we'll just take a look at these. Just to note also that all of the above methods, except technically quarterly billing, can be used to repay debt as well as ongoing consumption. So firstly, quarterly billing is a pretty standard method. You pay every 3 months. You pay for the fuel you've already used in the previous 3-month period, which people like, but it can result in large bills accumulating, especially in the winter months, and it isn't quite so easy to spread the cost with this type of payment. Probably most popular would be direct debit, where an agreed amount is taken from your bank account each month with an annual review. It's the cheapest method available. Deals are often more favourable when you're thinking about tariffs, and payments stay the same, which really helps with budgeting, but payments may not always be accurate. Underpayment or overpayment is very possible. You obviously need a bank account and cash flow for this option as well. Some people choose to pay by payment plan. These are small set payments, weekly, 2 weekly or monthly. You can make these at a shop pay point or a post office or bank. Smaller payments can help with budgeting. You can pay off debt using this method and have no payments being taken directly from your account. So it's really good if you're trying to manage cash flow. But if you have up to 3 missed payments, your supplier can cancel the plan, and it's sometimes quite difficult to reset that up. So just something to think about. Fuel direct is commonly used for outstanding debt and ongoing consumption, and it's taken directly from your benefit. You must receive income support, income-based job seekers allowance or pension credit for this. But if you have debt, the debt is repaid at the lowest payment option of £3.60 per week. Obviously the responsibility of paying the bills and the budgeting is removed from yourself, but it can be a good method for those who particularly if you have reading difficulties and you can't receive bills, or you have poor health and you can't get out to make payments, or those with very low incomes who are looking for low debt repayment, which is why we're just kind of mentioning that here. Prepayment meter is the last is the last option. The pay as you go. Customers given a key or a card, which should be used to top up the meter, and this can be done at special pay points in shops or at post offices. So you're basically paying in advance for the fuel that you're going to use. You cannot use fuel without paying for it. So you can't really increase your debt unless the meter isn't fed, and debt can be paid off gradually, but self-disconnection is possible, so as is an increase in collection rates, and it's harder to, you can't switch supplier or remove the prepayment meter if there is debt. But again, it is a popular option. It's something that we help clients with on a regular basis, just looking at payment reviews and figuring out the best option for them, particularly if there's any debt built up on the account, or they're just finding that their current payment method isn't working. So again, something we can offer advice and support on. Looking at the support offered by suppliers, Warm Home Discount is a government-led scheme which came into effect on the 1st of April 2011, and it's designed to offer support to customers who are likely to be at risk of fuel poverty. It's currently a payment to your electricity account of £140, and it's usually accredited to your account by the end of March. It's available to everyone who's in receipt of guaranteed pension credit, and you should qualify automatically if you have that. If you're on pension credit and you're not quite qualifying automatically, that's definitely something to be looked into for you. For those on other benefits or low income, you can contact your electricity supplier to find out if you're eligible. Each supplier has different criteria, so if you don't qualify for Warm Home Discount with your current supplier, it's another incentive for checking if you would qualify if you switched elsewhere. If in doubt, you can contact us at Changeworks, and it is something that we can assist with. We do assist many of our clients with access to the Warm Home Discount scheme. So another service provided by all fuel suppliers is the Priority Service Register, and this is available for those who are over 60 or with a disability. So these are some of the free services given to a client on the Priority Services Register. Firstly, there's a password scheme that's for home visits to protect against bogus callers. A meter reading service. Meters can be read every quarter if you have difficulty providing a reading. Moving a meter, like repositioning it to a more accessible place. This is quite rare, but they will consider it. Gas appliance and safety check. If all the adults in the home qualify for a Priority Services Register, if it's rented accommodation, your landlord is responsible. Controllers and adapters also. Adaptations might be possible to help with accessing controls for fires and radiator valves and that sort of thing. And there are also services for visually and hearing impaired customers, such as talking bills, large print bills, suitable facilities to allow a client to make a complaint. Also a bill nominee scheme. Bills are sent to a friend or a relative to help the client read it. And there's also support when the supply is disrupted. So with gas, for example, if all adults in the home qualify for a Priority Services Register, then alternative cooking and heating facilities can be provided. So it is a very useful service for many people, and worth checking with your supplier if you think that you're eligible to be on the Priority Services Register. So this is just a little added slide from this week after the news events from last week. I don't know if any of you were affected. We've obviously had quite a few suppliers over the past couple of weeks, including Avro and Green Energy going out of business just last week there. So many of you may be worried about the supplier that you're with currently going bust and what will happen to your account and supply in that eventuality. Firstly, we would say don't panic. Ofgem have a safety net which protects you as a customer, ensuring you're not left without gas or electricity, and that any payments you have made are protected. It's It's very important also to take a picture of your meter reading, and you can continue to do this regularly. Photographs of meter reads are also helpful if you're able, but not essential. It means you'll know how much you've used with your old supplier, and with your new supplier, since you were moved over, you can keep a copy of any recent bills, which will detail your current balance and your bill date. If you pay by direct debit, don't cancel this. Your new supplier will be in touch to explain next steps. If you have cancelled it already, don't worry, just keep putting payments aside so that you'll pay off any debt accrued during that period. And the next step really is just to wait. Ofgem will appoint a new supplier and they will be in touch with you directly. Once you're set up with your new supplier, you can contact them to check if you're on the cheapest tariff, as you may not have been put on the best available tariff, or you can shop around for a new supplier. So that's really the process, is that Ofgem will move you to a new supplier who will be in touch with you if your supplier goes out of business, and then you can check, once everything's set up, whether you're on the cheapest tariff or move around. People will be put on what's called a deemed tariff, which doesn't tend to be the cheapest. So it's definitely worth making that call when the account is all set up. For those of you with credit balances, your credit will be transferred to your new account, and you won't lose any of this. Any energy that you've used in the interim period and haven't been billed for can be taken from this. Also, if you're repaying a debt to your old supplier, you will still have to pay this back. Some new suppliers may agree to take this on, and for others you will need to pay back to your old supplier or to their administrators, and this will be explained as part of the takeover process. So we are in the process of producing a fact sheet for clients, and this can be emailed or posted out to anyone that's interested in receiving this, and it should be ready by the end of the week. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. Thank you everyone for coming along and listening. As with any of the advice and issues we've discussed tonight, our team of advisors are available to discuss with you further if there's something that you feel you need support with. I'm aware there were some topics I just touched on which you may want more information about. Definitely not enough time in half an hour to go into detail on all of these. We also have a number of fact sheets which you may find helpful. You can self-refer via our website or email us at our Warmth address, which is available on this presentation. It's just here, but this will all be circulated, and I think it's all being recorded as well, and I can circulate the slides. So I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has any just now, and if there's anything I can't answer at the moment, I can find out for you and send